TYIL Africa, an organization that is committed to raising generations of young leaders across Africa. Our programs include leadership education, leadership fellowship, research training, webinars, and conferences. Stay informed of our programs by following us on LinkedIn at TYIL and at TYIL Africa on Instagram.
Hello, you're welcome to the Future of Leadership podcast, where we discuss about issues related to leadership and, in fact, youth leadership. My name is Israel Oyedare, and I'm the host of this podcast. I'm also the founder of Teens and Youth in Leadership, popularly known as TYIL, an organization focused on youth leadership development. Through this podcast, you will learn from seasoned professionals and leadership scholars on their thoughts and perspectives on youth leadership. Stay tuned. Today, I have with me one of my very senior friend, a former senior advisor to the Human Resource Vice President at Virginia Tech. She has dedicated years in making top-level leadership impact and contributions. Thank you so much, Susan, for coming on the podcast here today.
You're quite welcome. Delighted to be here with you today, Israel.
You've done a lot of inspiring and accomplished things. Would you like to share with me what inspired you on this career choice?
Well, as I look back on my career choices, they weren't all that intentional, except for when I went to college at the University of Pittsburgh. I actually intended to go into the mission field. And so I was a pretty good student in math and sciences. And I looked up what types of degrees would be helpful in the mission field, and civil engineering was one that popped up. And so I pursued civil engineering. And as God would have it, I did not end up in the mission field, but I actually went into environmental engineering as my internship. And then I went with the state of Pennsylvania Environmental Resources for my first real job outside of college. And so I was there in the public sector for a little while doing environmental engineering, a short stint trying the private sector, which was for a coal mining company in Pittsburgh, and then got a job at a utility in Florida. And that's where I kind of progressed up the ranks in environmental engineering. I really didn't aspire to be like up at the top, but doors open. And I always thought I should try so that I didn't have a regret and say, no, I should have tried for that. And so I was very fortunate, and I ended up at the senior level at that utility in the environmental services area. And then they opened this position called Chief Human Resources Officer. And I was, I'll say, I got a nudge. It was a new role. And the CEO at that time thought that I would be good in the role. So I said, okay, I'll try it. And that's what I did for about 6 years. So that was my HR role, but it was at the very top level. So I wasn't a practitioner in HR. So it gave me a great deal of respect for those that do HR work. And as you know, Israel, I came to Virginia Tech, and I thought a temporary role, which ended up being about 7 years. So in the HR world again, but relied heavily on those that were practitioners. And so that's kind of how my career path went until just recently stepping away from that. And so I will say, in terms of how I ended up in the different places, it all started with where God wanted me to be, I suppose. Yeah. And it's been a lot of wonderful opportunities to work with people in different fields.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. I was going to say that now that you're retired, maybe you could reconsider going back to the mission field. Is that a plan?
I could go on a whole tangent on that, but several times I had made plans to go. And Haiti was one nation that had always been on my heart. And several times the trips were canceled because of political unrest and it wasn't safe. And I actually went to Mexico on a mission trip with my son when he was entering high school. And it ended up ending abruptly because of another matter. And so it was like, okay, God, I guess that's just not. But you're right. Now I got a little more time, and maybe that's what
Yeah,
I have in the next
a whole
chapter.
lot.
Yeah.
All right. So, Susan, I am very interested in knowing about your teenage years, your youth years.
Mhm.
Do you think your teenage years actually played a role in the perspectives, the leadership ideologies you have now? You kept on saying faith, God, mission. Do
Mhm.
you think all of these things started while you were a youth?
Yes, I can say, looking back, we had a difficult upbringing. My mother was diagnosed as paranoid schizophrenic, so she had a pretty severe mental illness that caused, I think, my father to, because we're six kids, so he had a difficult time and ended up resorting to alcohol a lot. So we didn't have a lot of parental oversight. I'll just say that. And through that, in terms of my development of leadership skills through youth into teenage years, it's just I knew I kind of had to do things for myself because I didn't have that nudging or assistance from parents who obviously are generally pushing children and helping them to kind of, you know, develop leadership or get good activities and things that, you know, are important as you learn to work with others. And some of those skills I'd say in my high school years, which is, more teenage time, I ended up being in leadership roles. I was vice president of our student class and had it wasn't because anyone was kind of pushing me to do it. I just I think learned that it was important to use my skills and my interest and continue to just throw my hat in the ring, if you will. And I was very much interested in kind of the greater good and how I could be involved in things instead of being a spectator and sitting back and looking. I guess just knowing that nobody else was going to do it for me. So I,
Hmm.
again, would try to do things. And I knew if the doors were closed, that wasn't where I was meant to be. But I knew that because of the way, my family had some difficult times when I was very young, I just was a more resourceful and resilient. And that's important in any kind of, whether you're a leader with a title or just a leader in your own way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That was a very vulnerable moment, and I appreciate you opening up and sharing your story with me. I'm interested in a particular subject, and the subject is leadership. Yes, I have world of experience in human resource, nonprofit, but leadership is something I'm passionate about. And I'm interested in knowing what you think about leadership. So when I tell you, Susan, as a youth, 19 years old, I want to be a leader, what do you think leadership is?
Hmm. Well, it's not being afraid to step out and try things.
Hmm.
You won't always be as successful as you might like, but you learn through difficult times. And I think being a leader requires you stepping out and not being fearful at times. It can be scary. You have to be courageous to step into things that you're not really all that certain how it's supposed to work or how you'll accomplish something. There's that expression about there is no I in team, the word team, TEAM, and the importance that I learned in leadership, through younger years all the way up through my career is recognizing the talents and skills of others and really trying to work together instead of as an individual trying to beat yourself on the chest and say I could do it all. It's being able to rely on others, to see the strengths in others, to encourage others, and people want to work with you when you value them. That's really,
Hmm.
really important.
So it's not about being the hero, it's about working with people in achieving a goal. And again, I appreciate the fact that you mentioned that leadership is about stepping out. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be simple. Sometimes you'll feel so incapacitated. Sometimes you'll feel so unworthy. But it's still about stepping out when you have all of these feelings. And
Yes.
as youth, this is the formative year and the time where they experience lots of these self-esteem issues. And stepping out as a leader, despite the self-esteem issues, what actually distinguishes you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, we're in a globalized world, everything is connected. I imagine being in Nigeria. I'm originally from Nigeria. I imagine being in Nigeria and I can still have this call, this podcast recording with you. In spite of this technical and global advancement, do you think that youth are in the right position to lead? And how do you think that youth can actually maximize all of these positives in this generation, comparing it with your generation while you're a youth to create change in their community?
Mm-hmm. Well, it certainly has changed. Technology is used in ways that I think could never have anticipated. But I do think that it's still for those that are interested in leadership and making a difference. I kind of translate those to be somewhat different. Being a leader is wanting to make a difference. Now, some may want to make a difference in their pocketbook and make more money, or make a difference in terms of a positive impact on the world. And the youth today can use technology in ways that they can reach the other side of the globe in seconds. And the words that we use can make somebody's day very uplifting or encouraging, or the opposite. And whether you have those words come out of your mouth or you write them down in the social media and some of the ways that people can share information now, it's the importance of trying to make a positive impact on the words that you use, on the conveyance of information through social media, through meetings, through however you communicate, because of the technology and the ways that communication can be so impactful, so instantaneously to so many. It's be very, very mindful of that anytime you speak or you write or you communicate. So, in terms of today's world versus the
Yeah,
world I
during
started out in as a
yeah,
youth into leadership, that's a
yeah.
huge difference.
So I'm interested in actually knowing your thoughts in the regard of global issues that happen now that we're experiencing, such as climate change issues like degraded health system, education issues. How do you think that youth of this age can actually create change in all of these spaces? Because these are actually global issues that
Mm,
can, just like you rightly said the other time, that can actually be promoted or, be fought against through the use of technology and the
mm-hmm.
words of our mouth. So, how do you think youth can stand for change positively in this regard?
Well, there's the expression from Mahatma Gandhi: be the change you wish to see in the world. And there are lots of issues that deserve our attention, and some may not, want to believe things about climate change or whatever. So you have some naysayers, but it's be as committed as you can to those things that are placed on your heart and that in terms of whatever your interest is, if it's in the medical field or in the environmental field, it's really pursuing the course of your life and your decisions and how you carry yourself and how you communicate with others in such a way that you are making a positive impression and you are really basing your focus on, to the extent you can, on facts and things that you have learned and not things that are just simply jumping on the bandwagon. So be open to, I'll say, the other side, or people. Understand the people that don't agree with you. Try and really
Mm,
understand where they're coming from. And I had the opportunity to do that, probably more so in the environmental field when I was working in it. I wanted to understand why people were afraid of, say, a new power plant or whatever, and then address the issues that people are concerned about or have fears about. So as leaders, young leaders moving into these areas that are really, really important, that have global impact, and just listen to those that don't agree with you and try and really understand them, but stay true to yourself and continue towards your goals.
Very interesting point there. So I am about to get to a particular question that I believe that you're in the right position to answer. Now, the concept of youth adult mentorship is one that scholars, organizational psychologists have found out to be an approach where a leader passes on leadership to a younger person. And I think the kind of relationship we have is the one where you constantly, try to make me a better version of myself. And I have had the experience of leading many people, mentoring people. For example, some weeks ago, I gave a presentation in class, and I was speaking to about 100 rising seniors at Virginia here. And after the presentation, I requested that they fill a survey. They filled this survey, and while I was trying to analyze their responses, one of the responses I saw was, make sure you do enough research before you teach. Now, I was teaching them about climate change, and the normal inclination I had was to be angry. I was very angry and agitated as to why I would spend over 1 hour teaching about climate change. And I am seeing the response of this person saying that make sure you do enough research before you teach. But then I took a step backward and I read the question again in the survey, and the question says that what would you advise someone who doesn't have an idea of climate change or what to do? So when I read the question again, I saw that actually this person wasn't talking to the facilitator, which was me, who was me. The person was talking about the response, and it showed how perspective actually plays a role. And it also shows how we need to be patient with youth that we're leading, mentoring, and trying to give leadership to. I know we have had this discussion before. You have shared how that you started a forum for young people in engineering, young ladies in engineering. Can you shed more light on that? What are the successes and what are some of the failures you have experienced mentoring young people?
Well, it's been kind of a desire of my heart to pass along the things that I think will be helpful for not just in their careers, but in life, kind of some of the lessons learned, but the importance of having, some call it balcony people, like people up there kind of cheering for you, and they're yeah, you can do this. Having that in the life of young people, because you don't know what kinds of challenges they have at home or other things, and so just being in that role, and I was able to do it starting internship programs at the utility that I worked at for quite a while, and giving some of these, and there were mostly engineering students. Utilities used lots and lots of engineering students. So, but it was in particular for me being a woman in engineering. And I can tell you that back in 1980, all that long ago, that's when I graduated from the University of Pittsburgh. And there were very few women in the field. They're still relatively limited. It's not a 50-50 split like our kind of population is. And so it was especially important to me to encourage those who might not think they could do engineering. It was too difficult, or that they didn't see somebody that looked like them. And that's true in so many different ways, for people to feel like they can do it. They don't second guess themselves out of trying things. And so in mentoring, I did that in some internship programs there. And when I left the utility here at Virginia Tech, I started with some other women, a group called Wings, Women Inspiring the Next Generation to Soar. And it was focused on young women in the engineering program at Virginia Tech, and just giving them some insights about, again, encouraging them not to feel in any way inferior, and to let them see and meet people that were out in the career field already. And some of the things that I learned through that was students have their priority, and that's getting through their engineering classes, and not necessarily going to forums and doing some of the things that we were trying to do. So it's being aware of where students are, what their needs and what their interests are. And as it, has turned out, mentoring was something that we started an internship program in HR through the Pamplin School of Business. We coordinated something that had been very successful. So I just, maybe it's, I like to hang around with young people. It makes me feel younger, but the,
I know that.
the importance of encouraging younger and older. I don't want to say it's only young people that need mentoring and guidance, but just being a cheerleader for those that need to see themselves through into the future, and being something that they may have some hesitance or lack of confidence. It's just to encourage. Confidence makes such a huge difference in everything. When you watching the Olympics, I won't go off on that, but I'm just like blown away at when somebody loses their confidence, their talent kind of evaporates, but it's still there. The talent is still there. It's just, it's in the head. And so that's what I think mentoring is about, encouraging people to be confident, to try, not always successfully. You got to keep trying and getting better. But having mentors or balcony people is I know it was critically important to me, and that's why I try and have tried to make a place for it in my time and my relationships with people.
Thank you so much for sharing, and I appreciate that you spoke about confidence. So I'm going to ask you the final question. I know you mentioned about confidence. What are the values that you think that youth of this age can actually embrace or embody for them to lead excellently?
I do believe being persistent and not being, it's can be a fearful thing, trying something new, but if you really have an interest or a goal in something, it will take persistence to get there. It's hard work. To do anything that's worth doing is going to take work. And so it's being able to be resilient when you don't feel like you're getting where you want to be. It's just having the resilience and resourcefulness to keep trying. And it can be discouraging at times when you think things should work out one way and they don't. But, there's an appreciation when you have to work hard for something and you get it. If it was easy, you don't celebrate as much. It just is not as it's just not worth celebrating when you don't feel like you're invested in something. So you have to invest yourself, and that's sweat equity. Keep trying. And there's something that I'm not sure who actually shared it with me, but it was an expression that I really liked. There's a sweet spot between having equal amounts of mastery and challenge. So when you first start doing something, you don't know how to do it. Somebody hopefully will kind of coach you along and whatever, but it takes a while for you to get to the point where you have a little bit of mastery, but you don't ever want to get to the point where you have no challenge at all, because there's no growth if you're not being challenged. So continue to challenge yourself and trying new things, and not getting stagnant. And again, working along with others, trying to help others accomplish what their goals are too, being a good teammate, knowing that you're unique and what your skill set is, your set of strengths, and the way you look at things is unique, and each of the other people sitting next to you are the same way. work collectively, you'll always have a better outcome if you can work collectively with different types of skills and insights and just differences in the way that people approach problem solving. If you have everybody thinking the same way, or you want to get people that just think like you do, it might be easier because you'll come to the same conclusion quicker, but it's not going to be the best outcome. So be open to making that happen. And it takes a little more work to include people that don't think like you or approach a problem. So those are just a few thoughts.
Yeah, thank you so much, Susan, for sharing that. I was going to say that thank you for also reiterating or saying it again that hard work is important. I used to think that I work hard, but after listening to you now, I think I shouldn't relax. I need to work harder. So let's have time to rest, right?
Yes.
All right. We've really had an interesting conversation today, and I appreciate you, Susan, for your time today. I appreciate you for sharing your thoughts and your experiences as well. I would like to ask if you have any closing sentences to any youth who is struggling with their leadership potential, anyone who is aspiring to be a leader, or even those who haven't discovered what their leadership potentials are.
Well, one thing that does stand out to me in a leader, whether they're youth or in their career or elsewhere, is coming with the frame of mind, how can I help? What can I do to help? That to me is a leader who's willing to give of themselves to help whatever the situation is. And so be a helper.
Thank you so much, Susan, for that thought. Thank you for listening to the Future of Leadership podcast today. If you are here to kindly share, subscribe, leave a review, and follow us across our social media platforms, including Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, all at TYIL. See you in the next episode.